Robert Hansen was known as a reliable husband, father, and a well-respected member of Anchorage society. He was a man who fit perfectly into the community, outwardly normal, even trusted. But behind closed doors, Hansen held a sinister secret. Over the course of 12 years, he would become known as the Butcher Baker. In the darkness of his actions, Hansen would abduct, assault, and take the lives of at least 17 women between 1971 and 1983. While Robert Hansen appeared to lead a typical suburban life, there was a darker side that no one could have ever suspected. Beneath the facade of a friendly baker, he harboured twisted urges. His victims were typically women whom he lured into his car, under the guise of offering them a ride. But once they were inside, the nightmare began. It wasn't long before Hansen's desire for control and violence led to his first known abduction. His modus operandi was chillingly simple. He would pick up a woman, hold her at gunpoint, and take her to his home. The initial assault was brutal, but it was what followed that made Hansen's crimes particularly terrifying. He would drive them to remote locations, where they were left to flee as he hunted them like animals. Once his victims were in his home, Robert Hansen's twisted desires took a darker turn. His house, located on the outskirts of Anchorage, became a prison for the women he abducted. Isolated from the outside world, the house hid the true extent of Hansen's horrors. Behind its walls, unimaginable cruelty was at play as his victims were subjected to torture before being taken to the wilderness. After the escape of his victim, investigators were able to trace Hansen's movements. The investigation began to take shape as authorities discovered more about his activities. Evidence from his home and his car painted a grim picture. What had been a series of disappearances now began to reveal itself as a calculated, horrific pattern of abductions and murders. The case finally cracked wide open in 1983. The testimony of the brave woman who had escaped Hansen's clutches led investigators directly to him. What they uncovered was horrifying. A pattern of abductions, assaults, and murders stretching over a decade. Robert Hansen's arrest marked the beginning of the end of his reign of terror, as more victims' names were brought to light. The case finally cracked wide open in 1983. The testimony of the brave woman who had escaped Hansen's clutches led investigators directly to him. What they uncovered was horrifying. A pattern of abductions, assaults, and murders stretching over a decade. Robert Hansen's arrest marked the beginning of the end of his reign of terror, as more victims' names were brought to light. In 1984, Robert Hansen stood trial for his crimes. The evidence was overwhelming, and his actions were so disturbingly methodical that it left everyone who learned the truth horrified. Hansen was sentenced to 461 years in prison, with no possibility of parole. His conviction marked the end of a dark chapter in Alaska's history, but the memories of his crimes would haunt the community for years to come. Robert Hansen lived the rest of his days behind bars. In 2014, after serving 30 years of his sentence, he passed away from natural causes at the age of 75. But for the families of his victims, the scars of his crimes remain. The story of Robert Hansen, the Butcher Baker, serves as a reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind even the most ordinary of faces. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the story of Robert Hansen. Please subscribe and hit that like button to help me build my channel until the next scary story. Goodbye.